I listened to the recording you all did. It gave me some conscious parameters of what I could not think, but was clearly present too. So that's very cool too. The last day of September, which I consider very significant.
You do? Now why? Tell me.
Because I think we're going into a sweep into October that has so much to do with what Anelia and you three were talking about.
Yeah.
And I just think we're in what I call a sweep, because I can't think of any other word that applies as deeply as that word would apply. So
it's interesting because I haven't read all of them, but I was starting to look at the comments on the forum from people who are listening to that energetic update, and it's funny. So many people felt, I don't know, like a little depressed or something, and I thought, but wait a minute. The end of the war between light and dark means the end of duality. It's the ascension. So what's the problem here?
Yeah, and it really, it really impacted how we define ourselves. We don't define ourselves by our direct connection. We define ourselves by our beliefs.
Yes. So
you're really slamming into the identity plane.
Yeah, our allegiance, either to the light or to the dark, as opposed to our actual source self. I thought, well, I guess we didn't get a chance to really express that, and a lot of people didn't get that.
That conversation is radical.
Yeah, it was very
in the cultural world, like when I first wrote about MetaPoints, which is a company I had before now, and I was very clear that the question I wrote, basically, well, if there's light and dark, then where do they meet? That was the question I wrote. And I could feel the ripple in the field of, oh, no. There can only be light. There can only be dark. There can't be anything else. They can't meet. It's just, and yet they have already, or we wouldn't exist. So it's really interesting, the deep psyche. It affects the deepest part of the human psyche where they're actually afraid they'll go insane if they include that. It's just the way we're going. It's just not going to be any other way.
Yeah.
We got a lot of pushback, Tantra. It was just interesting on the recording, not just because it was depressing to people and people tend to project into the future and get concerned about what's going to happen or how this is going to affect them or their family. But we got a lot of pushback because people said it just sounded flaky. And I think what they were picking up on that caused it to sound flaky was that Anelia was barely in the body. She's been having serious problems staying in embodiment.
Yeah.
And so and I think unless she had gone completely out of embodiment, she may not have perceived that. But she came back in and was trying to have this conversation. So it ended up, we sort of had to draw that information out of her. And a lot of people have commented that it sounded odd or that Vic and I didn't sound bought into the idea or whatever. It was interesting. But I think you're right. It was just so radical that it really threw people.
Yeah, it was radical in that it was a deeper level of the understanding that there's a polarized light and a polarized dark, and that polarized light and dark is what's collapsing into something that's beyond both. Mm-hmm. But it was a deeper a way. The way you stated it, Tantra, about how it affected a level of the psyche that was deeper, was why people were so reactive about it. I mean,
I tell you, I was off the charts excited. I totally went the other way because I had one of my clients send it to me and say, "Oh, Tantra, you really have to help me with this." I came off of it very frightened. And so I listened to the whole thing through, and I wrote her back, and I said, how could you possibly be frightened? And I just, blurted out everything I wanted to say to her. I said, this is the news that, churches, governments, everything has kept from us. This larger operating state that we've been existing in a long time. It was so a sci-fi movie. Actually, it wasn't a movie. It was like one of those 1-hour Twilight Zones. And they were you're out in the village, and the villagers were, talking about their god and talking about the parameters of what was really real for them. And then at the end of it, they go into the church, or their version of a church, to worship, and it's a missile that is upside down in the ground. And and I think about that. I think, humanity has made up all this stuff, which is mythic, based on something that is completely unexamined. And it's sort of like the missile upside down on the ground. And the phenomenal, it wasn't only radical, it was radical truth, which is really exciting.
Well, the interesting thing is, a missile upside down in the ground is a life-death thing for people.
Yeah.
Probably that missile landed and killed a lot of people, but left a lot of people around. And you could see how they would create a whole religion around it, because it's about that basic life-death survival issue.
Exactly, which is the big mesmerizations here.
After we'd had the call and I thought about it, I thought, well, this is so perfect. I mean, it's actually just the Ascension that, if you're removing this experiment in a light-dark world, that's the end of duality. What's the big deal?
Exactly.
Why? And yet, I actually didn't have the presence of mind to just consolidate it and say it that way when we were on the call together, because I was just being in her field and seeing it from where she was seeing it at that moment. I think that's why with both of us, Bach, we felt a little bit like, huh?
Well, in a way, it was surgery. Because you all were field beings being the field. I mean, I was listening to it, and the field was in a vibrational context that was designed to be outside of what people could wrap their head around. It forced them to be present to what there was to be present to. Yeah. And the reactions were the reactions of people having to be present to what there was to be present to. That makes it a really good call.
Yeah. I hear you. Because I came away feeling rather excited about it myself.
Yeah, I did too. I came away with a sense of huge relief.
Yeah. You also didn't hear the other part of the call where we were like, yay, so we don't have to do this stuff anymore.
Okay. If you had left that on, then people would have been too embarrassed to say they were upset.
Yeah.
Why don't I just sort of be the messenger from this end of this part of the matrix? And because let me say why I was interested in us gathering, particularly today, is, and part of this for me is simply instinct that I move with without words. But the fact that you all did that recording in September connoted for me something I had been paying attention to, because basically some conversations can't even be had. In other words, if the collective isn't ready for a conversation, usually that conversation cannot occur. In other words, we can't even think it. So there are times when I'm in a reading when I actually know that I can't organize a certain conversation because the receptivity of the person I'm talking to. Without that receptivity, I can't bring something into language. So the very fact it existed for me, and why it made me excited, was because something had come into language basically in the third dimension. It doesn't really matter what happens. It just matters it got in the door, and it got in the door at some level of full speaking. That combined with that I know, because we're right on it now, that October is what I call a potential pass-through. And I'll say more about that in a second. But one of my memory base is where beings that came into physical form had the mind of the matrices that created structures within which life forms could exist. So my background, my mind, is being part of not only physical, but also being non-physical, creating environments within which, I guess if we use this conversation, within which people could have joy and peace and bliss and love. So my way of existing is that certain beings, some of which we call human, have a fundamental relationship here on this planet to participate in what's occurring. So it isn't about getting anywhere for me. It's more about being the participation that we're designed to be. Some people could call it self-expression. And that when everybody's kind of doing what theirs to do and being what theirs to be and having what theirs to have, there's like this harmonic, there's like this symphony, which is the song of creation. And creation loves to sing. I mean, that's kind of the background that I'm coming to this conversation with. Why I am so drawn to the Awaken Academy is that in a multi-dimensional matrix, or many multi-dimensional matrices, when you have a certain number of people or collective numbers, so a certain number of people or a certain number of collected people, these kind of moments can occur, these transcendent moments can occur because there's a quantum occurring. So one of the things I've been watching since the beginning of September, which feels like a building wave of energy for me, a building wave of transcendent energy, is we got Patricia's coach saying something, we got Tantra saying something, we have the Academy saying something, then we have you all in that conversation, and you could feel the vibratory strengths of it. It's no longer fringe, as we might say sociologically. There's a literally vibrating, fundamental state shift energy that's building, and I can feel that. In my corner, because I'm community-based, I work with I gather people on behalf of something, I guess you would say, on behalf of them knowing themselves in their direct relationship to creation. I guess my push or my drive is to have them be aware of what there is to be aware of, present to what there is to be present to, and be what they're designed to be in the face of that. So that's kind of my corner of the activity. And what fascinated me when I read Lucia's book, and then when I began to interact with Amelia and you all, when this all began to happen, is what I term a living matrix. In other words, we don't have to be in agreement. We don't even have to know necessarily what the other person is talking about. But in this truing capacity that y'all have, my Tennessee accent, and in this truing capacity, there's just this amazing integrous truing. And if you
what
think
is the word that you're using, Tantra? I don't understand. Truing?
Truing, like you're always, what's the word? Somebody give me another word. It's like you're always truing to something. You're always making sure that you're completely true. You're not in belief structure, as near as I can tell. You're actually being present to what is coming through you, and you're aligning with that, or you're truing with that.
And because there's a collaboration, we validate each other.
Yeah, you actually create what I call a living matrix. In other words, it makes something stronger. It makes it what I call a field phenomenon. It makes the energy field that you're operating in strong enough for itself. Because, we all know the stories of Jesus dying on the cross and witches being burned at the stake. And it's not a personality phenomenon. It's the fact that the realm of the energetic matrix that they were existing in, it didn't protect them.
Right. And the other thing, Tantra, that I just want to, what you're saying that I'm not sure if Lucia heard about this piece about the truing, or just speaking whatever is truth at that, what you're perceiving directly and not what you believe, right?
Exactly.
that we hold a space for each other, even if we don't get it or even if we don't agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of that collaborative thing. That's that, we were talking about collaboration as the theme for November, and that is the thing about collaboration. It is not based on a mental thing. It's a heart-based thing where one holds for the essence of the other completely.
Yep. And therein lies the magic.
Yeah, very cool.
And it's a similar thing that I'm doing with the Creators Network community. Is it's in my terminology. I say I give everything a place. Everything has a place. There's no right way to be. There's no wrong way to be. And when everything has a place, people start truing to what they are. Why I'm attracted to interaction and just being present to all of you that are in the Awaken Academy. And just to put it real simply, is because when I hear, you're always true to what you're hearing, and you're always speaking from that direct connection. And when you're not, you're fine about it. I mean, you're just, there's this beautiful dance of integrity, design integrity, I call it. And so in my perception, this creates a strong living matrix within which things can occur that can't occur if you're just operating in sort of the bumper cars of personality. So that's kind of the background. So, which is kind of perfect because Amelia kind of knows about me anyway because we spent some time together. But so when I listened to that call, it was like hearing a ping, a sound in the symphony.
You're talking about the last energetic update that we did for Awaken, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It was like hearing a song or a tone or a melody that I had been hearing coming in to play, but I hadn't. When I hear, I don't hear in words. So when I listened to it, it was like hearing the words of the melody almost. It would be the way I would say it. And I had been doing some similar things with the community, some similar things about just stop caring about the future. Just be the dream you are. Don't be anybody else's dream. And so simple things that I'd been sort of pinging the community with. But it's all because of October, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have those conversations, because I have some puzzle pieces of it, but I was really interested in it. I don't ever, I guess we'd say, have the chance to interact at this level and stimulate my own mind to get present to something that I'm after getting present to, hence this call, basically. So just going back to that energetic update for a moment, I want to present where I'm looking from, because it's been this way since I was a child, actually. I always knew that there were two realities, that one was organized by light and one was organized by dark, and that for some reason that they didn't seem to be cooperative with each other. That's about as far as I got when I was a small child. And then as I began to get older, I began to become interested that I seemed to be present to a third reality. And yet nowhere could I find that reality in any shape or form. And I've never been afraid of evil. Sometimes I've been more afraid of light just because of a certain domination it has on this planet. Not because it's trying to dominate, as was said in the call. It's more the nature of itself. And yet the planet herself is light and dark. She can't exist without duality. So the planet can't exist without duality. We can, but she can't. She needs it to maintain her structure, I guess you would say. So then I became very interested in, okay, well, what happens in that place where there's a overlay, like in the yin and the yang, in the yin and the yang symbol. I was fascinated with the line, not the dots, but the line. Like, what made the light and the dark have a place together? What was that? As I entered into that consciousness, I realized, first of all, it was my consciousness, just to be straight about it, and that in my consciousness, there was a fusion. There was a third reality that carried no components of light or dark. It was just what I call being there, just basically being there. So that's kind of the first thing I want to share. The second thing is that I love quantum physics and quantum mechanics. I'm fascinated by fusion, and I'm just fascinated by, well, just about everything, I guess. And I'm fascinated by what has spirit become flesh, what has non-physical or energy become matter. That's just always been a intriguing thing for me. So for a long time, I didn't really deal in belief structures or religions or even understandings because I was paying attention to, wow, what is this thing when energy becomes matter and when things get denser? What happens? And then what's a consciousness that doesn't live in words? I mean, what's a consciousness of creation itself? That really became my fascination. But there were two things I wanted to bring up that were kind of holding places for me. One is the word fusion. And my experience has been that we've been in a fission-based reality or realities, interactive realities, where you have two things that when they come together, they create this power, but they also destroy. Just by the nature of them coming together, they destroy because there's this big mess. So if you ever watch atoms come together and produce fission, we have what we call nuclear waste. So in my metaphoric way of thinking, that somehow as long as we're operating with no place for things to live together in whatever way, that's kind of a messy phrase, then we would have this fission, and then basically, for me, humanity was sort of like the nuclear waste, had become the nuclear waste of this problem. And what I was watching was fusion. I was watching the beginning of fusion. That's where things come together, and they create a third thing that doesn't have any of the properties of the two things that brought it together, or the many things that brought it together. And that became entrancing, really, really entrancing to me. It was beautiful to me and still is beautiful. And my feeling was that there was something happening on this planet that was moving from fission to fusion. And then in the universe out there in the sky, the photon energy, our Earth, just started to come into a wave of photon energy, which is not magnetic energy, which is dual. Photon energy is light, but it's not light like something that's in duality. In fact, one of the things that's fascinating, I worked with a biochemist a few years ago, and actually the human body can actually shift out of a magnetic state into a photon state. It's just we're going to feel really weird. And so I kind of equated that to when people talk about light bodies, because that would be the equivalent of that in a more technical viewpoint, and kind of like I'm sort of technical that way. And then the last thing is this thing that's occurring now, which brings me to October. The word tangential. And tangential, well, there are two things that come together. One is tangential, where if something in physics, something has to go out of equilibrium to come into equilibrium at the next state in the dual world. You literally have to have something go off kilter for things to reform, and reform in a state that didn't exist before. But tangential is the tension. So I was listening to Amelia talk about the tension, and I only can say it very Neanderthal-y. I can't quite, this is the place I can't articulate very well. There are pre-existing DNA encodings that by the nature of the DNA design have this tension. In other words, things organize through tension. They organize by a whole bunch of things going into opposing positions, and then there's this power that takes those opposing positions and creates a tangential, a balance, creates a harmonic out of those opposing positions that creates new structure. So I think I got that said well. So when I listen, me being more of a technicat kind of thing, when I listened to your old conversation, it just so excited me because in the activity of beingness, absolutely, there is no doubt that there were two opposing forces by the nature of their design, not because they sat down and said, I'm going to oppose you, but by the nature of their design, the intricacy of the nature of their design. But by them being opposing forces by the nature of their design, they're creating a structure, a matrix. They didn't want to, they didn't ask to, and it's probably the last thing on their mind. But by the nature of this interaction between the earth and the cosmos and physical matter and non-physical matter, it's producing this kind of phenomenon. So I'm going to kind of stop there, and then I'll talk about why I think October is so important.
It's like there's the symphony of existence, and the dark forces, without knowing it, are being played into the symphony. They're part of the symphony, right?
Right.
And yeah, but you all are in this. This is the part that, boy, sometimes I really wish I could get across what I'm paying attention to, because it's more than the belief of it or the conversation of it. Is you all are this symphony. Like when I listened to that energetic update in September, I could hear the music. I could hear the resonance, the sound of that which has not been comprehensible on this planet at a quantum, which is what I think is occurring.
And can you repeat your perception that Victoria and I created a field when she spoke?
One of the things that I loved when I was listening to it was this being present to what there is to be present to. Because it's kind of the magic, it's the magic of what you all are calling collaboration. Because real collaboration is everybody being present as best they can to what another person's present to. But it forms a phenomenal matrix, an energy field within which something can come into existence in consciousness, let's say, although I'm also into the forms that will come out of it. But in consciousness, it actually creates the capacity for something to be held consciously in the collective that couldn't happen if there wasn't this, quote, collaboration or each person able to be present to the other's essence, I think someone said. And I found it extremely exciting. Exciting not because I'm excited about things really, but exciting because something that I had been in a tension about, to use the word tension, that tension started to relieve itself because I got brought into that. I got brought into it by my listening to it. And I think it also created a release of tension in the collective, or at least in the people that listened. Even though they reacted, we always react when something we've been cut loose from something.
Yeah, Tantra, there was another thing that you said that I'm going to be really clumsy and Neanderthal, as you said a minute ago, in repeating it, but it felt like it was a very important part of this. And that was, and I think this was also before Anelia got on the phone, that what was happening was that something was being brought in that hadn't been here before, an energetic understanding. As you were saying it, I was seeing Anelia out there, outside of the matrix, bringing something back in from outside of the matrix. That then there was this field that Lucia and I were representing, let's say, of that information coming in from someplace outside and then dispensing within in order to do that fission diffusion shifting of the within part. Am I making any sense in what I'm trying to do?
The only thing I might have a little differ about is I don't think she brought it in. I thought you all brought it in.
Oh, okay.
You were capable of being present. I hate to talk third party. I hate English in this area. That was the beauty, is her being able to be present to what she was present to in a diffused state. You cannot hold that vibratory field in in what people would call logical or mental state. It's a diffused state. And then you all were the conduit, it's not even the conduit, the receptive energy that allowed it to come into the less diffused state. But then you all have to be a little diffused too. It's like, you can't concrete something when it's coming into existence.
Yeah.
It has to be somewhat diffused. What was the phrase people used? It has to be a little loose.
Oh, spacey. They said
spacey. It has to be a little spacey. It cannot come in without being spacey,
Yeah.
I think that because we've been working now for a while, we are able to become one, to be able to explore information and energies. And because all of us have a different viewpoint and structure and vocabulary, we're able to manifest it in a form that is comprehensible in this reality as a human.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you all carry worlds. I mean, one of the things that happens in your all's interactions and in the work you do, you define what I call your matrix. You define your own energy field by your own truth, not by your own truth. And so when those that's why I said about truing was such an important word here. When you all come together, you are, by the nature of your coming together, multifractaled. You're multidimensional by the nature of your coming together, because each is unique and essential to creation, truing to that, and it creates a larger synergy, a larger capacity. Not only a larger capacity for understanding, it creates a larger capacity for impact.
And the beauty of it is that others are not excluded. So if you chose to, you can enter that like dance as well. And others who are listening in also enter the dance. And because it's out of time-space, that input or that viewpoint is also picked up and reflected within the conversation. That's something that I was excited about today, because I thought we could do just that, look at this item, which is the field that we've been looking at, and that you, Tantra, have seen that it lasts until October sometime. And for me, it was like it would last until, 3 weeks or something or more, to have a look and explore it, because I think it could bring in some more information or some way of interpreting it that can be helpful for all of us and for anybody also that taps into it.
Mm.
That's the beauty. The phenomenon of interaction that we're in is actually living oneness. It's not a technology. It's not a methodology. It's an actual experience. And then, experience came before we described how experience got there. So it's kind of an interesting balance, because once, I can say it in metaphor, one of the methodologies we've been operating in is doing. That's why it's getting so weird to try to do right now. We don't feel like we should be doing anything.
Right.
And yet there's things to do. So there's this confusing moment in time, in time-space continuum. But what's really happening, at least metaphorically speaking, or a way to put it in language, is we're now, the leader of the pack, you might say, is now being. Doing is now not the organizing state that we're in. Being is the organizing state that we're in. So when we're in a conversation like this, a listener might be saying something, which I go back to that spacey thing. Well, I don't know what to do with this. That would kind of be the language base they'd use. But the phenomenon was happening in being. So they did have to be with it. They couldn't avoid being with it. And we don't yet have the mindset, as a collective anyway, that comprehends the phenomenon of being, because it has nothing to do with doing whatsoever. It's not even in the same frequency base. So when I got excited and I said to Amelia, I just want to hang out with you all for a minute. Not, you know, and then I was stumbling all over myself because I was saying, I don't know if anything will happen out of it. I don't know if it'll turn into a talk. I don't care. It's the phenomenon of being inside of the energetic, of the level of comprehension that was occurring in being that made me want to come to the call to support a shift that is occurring here. And this is where I think things get confusing, and it's actually what I'm posing as a question into the field of all of us, is that I am always so clear that I must respond to what there is to respond to, and that there's some kind of harmonic, or I'm the string that helps the guitar play kind of thing that I experience. But I'm also, as a prophet, I'm also aware when a collective needs to respond. And I'm just aware of it. I trust it, but I've never understood why, or because there's so much belief that, there's a huge belief that humanity is random and it doesn't have any influence in anything. But yet for me, I can feel when a collective needs to occur to allow for something either to increase its magnification or to have something come into existence. And that's why I think October is so intense, because I do think there is the ending of the experience of the polarity of light and dark, and that somehow if enough of us can't get, and I could be very wrong about this. In fact, I'm coming into it as a statement that is wrong, but it's as far as my mind can get. But I keep being driven by, if enough of us can get awake to that, like in the energetic call and in some of the things I'm doing, and there's a relief or a release of the tension, or there's an ability to have existences, for us to become present to existences that maybe haven't existed before, but haven't existed at least in our consciousness before. And so that's really what I'm fascinated by, because something's clearly occurring. There's no doubt about it. Because I've given myself totally over to what created me, I'm being driven by it. You know, I'm talking to people about just lift up a little higher just for a moment. We just need a moment for everybody to just sort of lift off, just lift up, and then something can something. But if that something can something, I don't know what it is, except it seems important. That's what I'm bringing to the table. See, what if there's no forward movement now? See, I don't think there's any forward movement now. I think there's only, and it's not hierarchy either. Best I can get at is the increased magnification or the increased reflection of something that is seeking to have a presence here. So like knowing God, only not the way people talk about it.
When I look at it, I see it as the bit that was missed by most individuals whom I've heard from about the video, which is the third viewpoint, the being who could see both the light world and the dark world and created the dual light and dark being to go into both. They miss that viewpoint. They miss that entity. They don't even acknowledge. It completely bypasses the consciousness of the person listening to the call. And when I look at it, I see it as human, as the human consciousness. I see it as the collective, as the source energy, the consciousness behind everything and everyone that everybody actually does have and has access to. But for some reason, it wasn't perceived or seen. And I'm thinking that one of the things that was happening before was that I was sitting with different structures of the divine or reality or belief systems as well. And at one point I found myself sitting with that light and dark energy, but they were both existing, yeah, within this observation without affecting, right? And I think that one of the keys here is that we cease to affect or try to affect the other, whichever side we decide to identify with, whether it is the light, the dark, or the other entity, which did affect the other two also, like actively affected light and dark by creating this other entity, which was both. And it's like an observation of being aware of all of it without affecting it.
Right.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Without intentionally affecting it. And throughout that time as well, what I've been finding myself do in the past few days is to remove my energy lines from everyone and everything and every energy that was out of integrity. Yeah? And obviously the words out of integrity are personal, energetic. It's like a form that I express an energetic resonance. So if that something is not resonant with my vibration, for me, I would interpret it as being out of integrity, but not so much in a judgmental sort of way, but more in a out of resonance. So anything or anyone who is not resonating, my link with them, my energetic link with them is not resonating with the energy that I feel I have chosen, then those lines are being cut right now. Yeah. And I think it's the holding of that, when you described it as a symphony, it's like being the symphony, being the sounds, being the players, being the instruments, and being the whole that holds the symphony at the same time. And when one instrument is out of tune, you look at it, and by looking at it, or in a very sharp way silencing it within the whole, you hold the symphony playing for as long as it needs to play. It's like it's not for everything. It's just a temporary location in time-space where everything has to be in tune with within ourselves. So what might be totally resonant within my own field and my own life is different to what somebody else's is. And I might be dissonant within their symphony, and therefore they need to cut those lines from me or to me so that their symphony can play fully.
Beautiful.
You see what I...
Yeah, can I comment on that? This is Tantra. This is when I wish I was like a little teeny fairy, so I could just jump up and down, because I'm just too large to get up and down, jump up and down on the bed right now. Anyway, so the discernment that happened in your speaking was the phrase that caught my mind and aligned me properly to myself, was the phrase "not affecting it." And the two words that keep playing in my mind, one is reflecting. And what I realized in your speaking was that with the people I'm talking to, I'm asking them to reflect upon themselves, be their own dream, for the sake of dreaming, for the sake of their own dream, not to get anywhere, not to try to do anything with it, just curl up in their own dream, with what you call, their own integrity, and just stop being bounced around by that which they're not of, that which they're just not of it, not of that other thing. So there's that's one of the things that there's something, and then the other thing you said about playing as long as it can play, and everything has to be in tune with ourselves. And 99% of my mind deals in resonance and sound and melody. That's how my beginning listening occurs, and then it comes down into words. So there's something about joy, bliss, glee, not emotional joy, bliss, glee, but the state of like when we look upon something that we are so affected by its beauty, and that's not for any reason, that's not to get us anywhere, that's not to improve our existence, but there's this state when you're really in tune with something. In that moment, all life is magnified. All life is huge, like this resounding again symphony. And that's actually what I'm feeling. And is I'm feeling this moment where humanity, just ever how many that can just stop being affected by their life, affected by their circumstances, and stop trying to affect their circumstances. Just leave themselves alone to be, as much as they can, their own being, and of course in my language, in their own direct connection to creation. And I hear this loud, expanded, multifractaled, rippling out into a shared delight much further than the earth plane. And I guess I've always loved human beings. I've never felt like a human being or how I see other human beings feel. But I've always loved this species. And I think that my own heart is that we have this moment in October where all these things we're talking about stop being beliefs, and they actually begin to become a shared delight or a shared experience. And that's the other piece for me, is I think there is a shared experience where each person is uniquely identifying that experience within their own design, but it lifts us out of an experience that we're just no longer supposed to have, in simple terms.
Yeah. Can I say something? There's just something that just really hit me as you were speaking, Tantra, and as a follow-up to what Anelia had just said. It's very simplistic, but it's like what you're describing is an experience of ascension beyond that whole light-dark duality thing. However, it's like removing, sorry about that phone ringing in the background, it's removing any doing from the ascension process. Because the way most of humanity has been looking at it as something to strive for, something to do in order for it to happen. And what we're describing here, what I'm really feeling at a very deep level, is when, it's going to sound crazy, but when the ascension process is no longer hijacked by the human energy of doing and striving, then it happens. This vision into fusion, into a state of consciousness that doesn't hold or that can perceive differences, but it's transcended. It's beyond the polarized light-dark piece. And yet, if you're looking at it from the human perspective of doing in order for something to happen, it hijacks the capacity for that ascension to simply be, which is actually in everybody's nature. Is this making any sense?
Yes. And let me add something. It's the language itself is part of the problem, because the language ascension is about doing. I am going to go from this place to someplace else, and it will be better, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever sat with Gangaji, but she has a siddhi, a power. And basically what she does is she talks someone, and she uses the sacred voice, but she talks someone right up to the edge of a cliff.
Mm.
And then what she says in the physical is, just stop, right? And if a person can do that, and that's all she does, just repeatedly in her sessions, if you go and sit with her, she just walks you right up to the edge of the cliff and she says, stop. And if you can grab on to one of those invitations and actually stop, then you move into the state of pure awareness, which is what all of us are referring to, right? Which is there, which just all the time, pure consciousness, presence, whatever you want to call it, which constantly gets overshadowed by human experience, by thoughts, by emotions, whatever, by doings. Let me go back for a moment because for me, this ties into what I saw on the equinox. And I don't know, Tantra, if Anelia shared that with you, but I had a class for Awaken to do right at the hour of the equinox. And we spoke just before that class, and I invited Anelia to participate in it because we were seeing that it tied into this original seeing that she had in the energetic update, the experiment is over. And what I was feeling viscerally before the meditation was this suction in and through this wormhole that we were all proceeding in. It felt like, to me, all of humanity, the entire collective. It had nothing to do with light or dark. It was just this movement through a portal. And so the meditation was really a guided, I was guiding people. I was helping them navigate through that portal. And since that meditation, I really haven't tapped into it much. But now, Tantra, I'm hearing you say something that you said just then about it's not about going somewhere, it's not about doing something. I suddenly realized that that whole phenomenon that I was perceiving was born out of doingness. It was still born out of the collective perception that has grown up through the patriarchy that says we're going somewhere. In the Ascension, we are rising up. And I was seeing this portal, and we were going someplace, and I was helping people navigate through it. But something that you said caused me to see, it is not that. It is simply stopping. And if there were enough people who could stop, it would be an explosion of consciousness that would ripple through the universe, not a violent explosion, but an explosion that is so soft and so subtle that it is dissolution itself. It is dissolution of the paradigm as we know it. I mean, it is dissolving anyway, but it would be a phase transition that would facilitate a more graceful transit for many people.
A transit from nowhere into nowhere, just being. Not a transit from somewhere to somewhere else.
Exactly. Exactly. It would be a stopping, a complete stopping, and a complete, well, it would depend upon the person and how much work they had done, but a complete recognition of that. I am that, thou art that. What this is that.
Because our language set, the way we speak language, by the nature of our language, especially English, we're always moving something forward. We're subject, object, see, spot, run.
Yeah.
So it's, what's so beautiful about being in this conversation for me is it also has a language base. It starts to force a language that doesn't, a presence of a type of languaging that doesn't, by the nature of the language, force us to try to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And that, so there's an activity going on in this conversation. There's an activity of a reset of language, not necessarily word-based language, but reflection-based language or resonant-based language that allows people to hear and not by the nature of by the language itself, forcing things to try to move somewhere or go somewhere. And there are two things that have happened for me on this call, which I'm just intensely grateful for. Beyond belief grateful, really. My form of what really makes me feel very happy. One is the reset of the language base. That's very critical. Because we hear these phrases, and we mustn't be caught in the phrases as forward-moving phrases. They're presencing something, phrases. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is the reflecting upon this, that each of us is in our own being getting present of what each of us is getting present to, which is the field of being. It isn't the field of doing. That's what I've really, it relieved my tension. And that's important. I'm complete.
There's a great big grin on my face right now. I think I feel like that too.
What timing are you seeing, Tantra, that you referred to earlier in October?
Well, I've been reading, I read, someone sent me Patricia Cote-Robles, and she has very specific times. Mostly I'm just on attention. I'm just paying attention. But I do think it's somewhere between the 7th and the 15th of October, which feels like the epicenter. It feels like that's the epicenter. And this is the first time, there's only been one other time for me, but the first time I've been gathering, what's the word I want? I feel like there's a quantum of attention that is being called for. And so I'm just mostly moving with that instinctively. But I really think there's something for people to be present to, and it's just for a moment, step out of it all. Feel like you're standing in the sun, or like you're, that you're just in the delight of existence, regardless of what it is, or the anguish. Doesn't much matter, as long as you're just letting yourself be there. And I think it's going to create a pass-through, some kind of pass-through of, and I'm not sure of us. This is where I get confused. It's a certain kind of pass-through, but it's not an action. It's probably a state shift that floats down into the cellular makeup of humanity, and I don't know, new things happen, things we don't know about. It's wonderful when a psychic can't predict. That's when you know you're out of it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, so thank you all.
Thank you, Tantra.
Thanks for joining us. Super. We can do it again, yes?
Yeah, and it was so, this was so important for me in the way that I become supported, and what I'm present, what I am being asked to do presence, and I adore you all. That's the bottom line here.
You see why we keep pushing female collaboration.
And that it's extended out beyond. That's the part that's also powerful. All right, well, let's go do our day.
Okay.
Or not. Thank you all.
Okay, take care, Tantra.
Thank you, Tantra.